Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're having a great day today. So in today's video I have my first ever actual dupe for the Norvina palette, and it is from W7 called Violet Lights. When I open it, you're gonna see straight away that it is indeed a straight dupe of the Norvina palette, just like all the other W7 palettes I reviewed previously. They also have one for the Sultry palette already, but because I don't intend to purchase the Sultry palette, I will probably not review that one. So as of today, this is my last W7 Anastasia dupe that I'm reviewing. And well, I think looking at my eyes, you can't really tell that one of them was done using this palette. If you have seen any of my previous videos, you probably know that this is the dupe side normally. So this is obviously the original Norvina palette. As always, I think the dupe looks quite alright. So obviously this is the original Norvina palette. This was, up until today, the last palette she did with this velvet outer packaging. I did really like that, and I was collecting her palettes up until that point. But then the Sultry palette had this gold glitter on the outside, and then the Riviera palette had just a cardboard packaging on the outside, so just stopped collecting them. I do really like the Soft Glam, Subculture Norvina and Modern Renaissance though, so that is my little collection from her. I do still hope that she's gonna come out something similar to what the Mario palette was, but I'm just gonna wait until then. So as you guys know, the Norvina palette retails for £43 or $43 in the USA, and it is named after Anastasia's daughter, and this color theme is obviously a really purple, really pink, a little bit different, but I still think it's really similar to what Soft Glam was. Honestly, if you take out Love, Wild Child, Celestial and Soul, it's basically almost the same as the Soft Glam palette, which is not really criticism for me, because I do really love the Soft Glam palette. I feel like that's her most staple neutral palette that everyone can use. This one is just a little spiced up version of that basically. The Violet Lights palette retails for, well, it officially retails for £10, but you can get it for £4 or £5 at any time. So let's just say that it retails for £5. It has the same layout of the colors, and whilst the lighter ones, and especially unfortunately the first couple of shimmery ones, don't swatch as good as the original, I still feel that it is possible to create the same look. Maybe it just takes a bit more time and effort. The Norvina palette is definitely more beginner friendly, and it just takes less effort to create a really beautiful look. But to be honest, that can be said about all of the high-end eyeshadow palettes. You will get more fallout with the Violet Lights palette, and you're not going to be able to create the same contrast, the same depth to the look that you can create with the Norvina palette. But other than that, you know, if you are just looking to have a palette to try out the looks that you've seen online, other people creating with the Norvina palette, if you just wanna test how purples and pinks look on you, but you don't wanna go on and spend £43 to be able to do that, then I think the Violet Lights palette is a really good option. Despite the lighter weight, it actually contains more product than the Norvina palette does. And I did mention in one of my videos before that they don't claim to be cruelty-free and vegan, but they actually are. It's just not on the packaging. So if those are the things that concern you, then you don't need to worry about those. One of my biggest concerns about the Anastasia palette previously was that the Subculture palette, for example, had a 6 months shelf life, while the W7 palette had 18 months shelf life. Now I checked on the Norvina and actually this one has the same 18 months shelf life. So I think it must have been just something about the Subculture palette that required a 6 months shelf life. I think that is really, really short, and to be honest, I had my Subculture palette longer than that, and I think still everything is fine with it, but I think there must have been something in that palette that required to put 6 months on it instead of 18. I don't think that the palette otherwise is completely useless after 6 months, but once again, the Norvina palette has the 18 months shelf life now. When this came out, I feel like not everyone was crazy about it. Obviously, Anastasia had previously the Mario palette that everyone really appreciated, and then she made the Modern Renaissance palette, and that just completely blew up the market. I feel like that was the most hyped up and most famous eyeshadow palette ever made. I feel like it was literally everywhere for at least 2 years, and even now no one is throwing it away. Everyone loves it. And then she created the Subculture palette, which obviously came with a lot of controversy. A lot of people were on the fence about it. I personally love it, but I have to mention that I got mine not that long ago, so it could be that that bad batch that everyone was talking about was at the beginning and they fixed the formulation since. However, due to the bad reputation that the palette had, they decided to discontinue it. And then they came out with the Soft Glam, which was just as loved as the Modern Renaissance, but I feel like it didn't get that much of an attention. It was just such a neutral everyday palette that, you know, it wasn't anything special about it, but it was a really good stable palette. So I feel like everyone loved it again. And then she came out with Norvina and a lot of people were not, you know, that happy with it. I personally like this palette. I think the colors are really something different, and I like that it's pink and it's purple, but on a very soft, subtle way. I don't need palettes like the Riviera palette because I have loads of Juvia's Place palettes, so I don't need her to give me these like really full-on pigments, but I do appreciate things like Love, and you know, you can take it both ways. So I do appreciate shades like this. I do really like this shade called Drama. I feel like Volatile is such a special shade. It's right in between brown and gray. It's really special. And just overall, you know, this palette for me, it's really beautiful. If you don't want to use the purples and the pinks, you don't have to. You still have plenty of looks that you can create with it, and I think that's what I like about this palette. There are so many possibilities of, you know, looks that you can create. Half of the palette is matte, half of the palette is shimmery, and I feel like that comes through in the Violet Lights palette as well. So the top row is shimmery, but the pigmentation is not half as good as the ones in the Anastasia palette. And the shades that are matte but meant to have glitter also have glitter in this palette. So the shade that dupes Soul and the shade that dupes Love, they also have glitter in them, just like the Norvina palette. In this first shade that dupes Beige is also a sateen shade that makes it really easy for other colors to glide on top. Once again, I feel like they are really similar. I'm gonna insert a picture just in the corner to show you how they swatch compared to each other. I feel like you can still tell that the Norvina palette swatches much better than the Violet Lights palette does. But I mean, come on, it's 10 times cheaper, so what do you expect? I feel like I was able to create a really similar look, and swatching the colors, they look really similar to the original one, so I feel like you won't have a problem creating other looks either. Now without further ado, we're gonna jump into creating this look so that I can show you which shades I used to achieve it. After that, I'm gonna tell you my final thoughts of these two palettes. Okay, so as always, I'm gonna start with putting a base down, and I'm gonna use the MAC paint pot in the shade Painterly today. As always, I'm gonna be using the cheaper palette on this side of the face, which is today the Violet Lights palette, and the more expensive one on this side of the face, which is the Norvina palette. And each time I'm gonna start with the Norvina palette because I used that palette before. I know how it performs. First, I'm gonna take the shade Beige just to kind of set everything. This is not a matte base shade. It kind of has a satin sheen to it, and it makes every shade you then put on top of this one to just glide on, so it's a really nice base shade. And now before we move on to the W7 side, I'm gonna take the shade Incense and apply it to my crease. And from the crease, I'm blending this shade upwards. Now we obviously want to do the same thing on the W7 side. So I'm going to take this first shade called White Light and just use it as my base. And now I'm going to go into the brown shade, which is called Chemistry in this palette. This one is definitely a warmer brown. I feel like the Norvina one is almost like a grayish brown. This one is much more warm. The base shade did a very good job with helping the colors glide down on top of it. And I think the pigmentation of this brown shade is not bad at all. I managed to build it up really nice, and a part of it being a more warm shade, I feel like the two sides look quite similar. Now with a pencil brush, I'm gonna dip into the shade Soul, and I'm gonna start applying the shade Soul in the inner and the outer corner of the eye. Now I'm going to take the W7 palette and dip into the shade Gamma. I don't know how much you can tell on the video, but the W7 side is again more warm. and obviously less pigmented, but I kind of expected that. Otherwise, it's looking really similar so far. If I was just wearing one of them, I don't think anyone would be able to tell the difference, but obviously in a video like this we are picking apart the palettes, so yeah, it's definitely more warm than the Norvina one. So as a next step, I'm gonna connect the shade Soul on the top. And now obviously we're gonna repeat the same thing on the W7 side, so I'm gonna take some more of the shade Gamma. I am getting a lot of fallout on the W7 side. I guess that's because it's not as pigmented, so I need to go back and put more pressure on to get the color payoff I want. So this is how it looks so far. Now I'm gonna take some of this Kat Von D White Out pomade and I'm gonna just whiten the middle area because we're gonna create a halo eye, if you haven't guessed it yet. Now I'm gonna take some of the shade Wild Child, which is probably the worst performing shade in the whole palette, but it's gonna be enough to just top up the edges of Soul to help us create an ombre effect. Obviously I'm gonna go back in a second and work these colors into each other, but before I do that I'm gonna take the shade Dreamer and place that right in the middle. Now before we clean this up, I'm gonna do the same thing on the W7 side. First we're gonna take the shade Radioactive, and actually the shade Radioactive performs much better than the shade Wild Child does. However, this one is not duochrome like Wild Child. It doesn't have that gold reflect to it. Now I'm gonna take the shade Oxygen and place that in the middle. And now that that's done, I'm gonna take the pencil brush again that we used with the shade Soul, and I am going to take some of Soul and just make sure that the edges are blended and that everything transitions into each other really nicely. And now obviously we will do the same on the W7 side. So we're taking again some of Gamma and just blend the colors into each other. Now I'm gonna go off camera and I'm gonna apply some eyeliner and mascara. And that is the completed look. Like I said, this one is the Anastasia side and this one is the W7 side. I definitely think that there is more contrast to the Anastasia side due to, you know, the dark shade being darker, the light shade being lighter. But at the end of the day, the W7 palette looks really, really similar. As always, please do let me know in the comments down below which one did you prefer. Which one would you purchase? Would you splurge or would you save some money and just go with the W7 one? That's it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already because I would love to have you here. Enjoy the rest of your day. I will see you guys next time. Bye.